Hello friends, welcome to a new topic today. In this chapter, we are going to learn about the next important thing in pharmacology, CVS pharmacology, that is heart failure. So if you see in the heart failure, what are we going to see in heart failure? Heart failure can be divided into two types. One, we have acute heart failure. Second, we have chronic or compensative heart failure. Okay, so if you see, what are you going to see in acute heart failure? In acute heart failure, you will have less congestive symptoms. Okay, because of decreased congestive symptoms. See, in acute heart failure, you have two things. Why is there acute heart failure? So if you see, this is the heart, okay, with four chambers, atria and ventricles, two atria and two ventricles. Now what happens in acute heart failure is the heart is not able to pump blood properly to the ventricles. Okay, the heart is not able to pump blood properly from the ventricles to the aorta. Why is the heart not able to pump blood properly? See, what may be the causes? It's simple. Just think, if there is something high pressure here in the aorta, okay, like for example, if there is a lake, river going on, and if there is a big stone here, can the water go properly? It cannot, right? In the similar way, if there is a high pressure distally, then the ventricle has to strive hard to pump the blood into the aorta. Sometimes ventricle, even though it strives very hard, it may not be able to pump blood into the aorta. You got it? Why is that? If there is increased blood load, increased fluid load, think that if there is increased fluid load in the aorta, okay, then there is lots of blood already in the aorta, so ventricle has to strive hard to pump the blood. It has undergone hypertrophy, all the changes have been occurred, but still if the heart cannot pump the blood into the aorta, then that is one cause. Okay, the second cause is the heart itself. See, the distal pressure is completely normal, but the heart itself has some problem, and because of that problem, the heart is not able to pump the blood. That is, there is intrinsic ionotropic defect. Okay, because of this intrinsic ionotropic defect, the heart is not able to pump properly. That is the second cause. Okay, you can divide the causes into two. One, we have congestive symptoms. Those are because of increased fluid load or congestion distally. Second, ionotropic effect. That is, the heart is not having proper capacity to actually pump the blood. Okay, so we are divided into two types. So based on those two types, we can divide the drugs which are used in acute heart failure into those which decrease the congestive symptoms and those which have positive ionotropic effect. Okay, the drugs which decrease the congestive symptoms include diuretics, and the drugs which have positive ionotropic effect include dobutamine, dopamine, nesiritide, and inodilators. Okay, so these are the drugs. Then we have chronic compensative heart failure. For chronic compensative heart failure, it is chronic. It has been there is changes that are occurring in heart slowly over a period of time. For that, you can give vasodilators or diuretics, okay, inotropes, and beta blockers can be given in chronic compensative heart failure. Okay, remember one thing, these beta blockers can be used in chronic compensative heart failure, but the same beta blockers are contraindicated in acute heart failure. In acute heart failure, beta blockers are contraindicated, whereas in chronic heart failure, you can give beta blockers. Okay, so we will see the drugs like one by one. Okay, the first drug is about morphine. So what do you see in morphine? Morphine is actually a pain analgesic. Okay, it relieves pain and it calms down the patient, and because once the patient calms down, the oxygen demand itself decreases. So that is the reason why morphine is given. Then what is the drug of choice for acute congestive heart failure? For acute congestive heart failure, the drug of choice is dobutamine. Okay, the drug of choice for acute congestive heart failure is dobutamine. Then what is the drug of choice for heart failure plus renal failure? The drug of choice for heart failure plus renal failure is dopamine. See, the drug of choice for acute congestive heart failure is dobutamine. The drug of choice for heart failure with renal failure is dopamine. Then First we will see all the drugs in detail. The first group of drugs are phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors, or also called as ionodilators. So these drugs will inhibit the phosphodiesterase 3. Okay, once they inhibit this phosphodiesterase 3, this will increase the cyclic AMP. Okay, normally if you see, this phosphodiesterase 3 degrades the cyclic AMP and it degrades into ATP. Okay, but because this phosphodiesterase inhibitors, this phosphodiesterase 3 is inhibited, this conversion of cyclic AMP to ATP has been lost, right? So because this conversion has been lost, okay, because of that there will be influx. This increase in cyclic AMP will lead to influx of calcium. Okay, because of the influx of calcium, when the calcium reaches inside the cells, then obviously there will be positive ionotropic action, and this positive ionotropic action will cause increase in cardiac index, and it will also cause increased left ventricular ejection fraction. At the same time, if you see this cyclic AMP in the smooth muscles, it causes relaxation of smooth muscles, and because of the relaxation of smooth muscles, it causes direct vasodilatation. And now because of this vasodilatation, it has actions like it increases the peripheral vascular resistance, decreases the peripheral vascular resistance, and also decreases central venous pressure. Okay, so if you see, these phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors have two main actions. One, they decrease the cardiac index, they increase the cardiac index and thus increases the left ventricular ejection fraction by causing positive ionotropic action. Second is they decrease the peripheral vascular resistance and thus decreases the central venous pressure by causing direct vasodilatation. Okay, both these actions will cause the ventricle to pump the blood properly, because this decrease in peripheral vascular resistance has stopped the distal has decreased the distal pressure, and this has increasing cardiac index has made the heart to pump the blood properly. Then if you see the side effects, these side effects are very important. The side effects include, this can cause thrombocytopenia, which is the most important side effect. Okay, the other side effects like nausea, diarrhea, abdominal pain are there. Along with that, there is liver damage, sometimes fever and arrhythmia are also seen. What is the use? These are actually used in short-term IV for severe and refractory congestive heart failure. They are used as short-term treatment, that is by IV route, for severe and refractory congestive heart failure. Okay, then what are the drugs? We will see the drugs. The drugs of phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors include milrinone, ambrinon, levosimendan and pimobendan. We have milrinone, ambrinon, levosimendan and pimobendan. Okay, so if you see milrinone causes a side effect. The side effect in milrinone, the side effect of thrombocytopenia is rare, and because of this rare side effect, this is preferred. Okay, then if you see, this levosimendan and pimobendan will inhibit phosphodiesterase 3 and it also has one more action, that is it sensitizes the myocardium to calcium also. Okay, so this is about phosphodiesterase 3 inhibitors or ionotropes. Then the next ionotrope which is important here is about cardiac glycosides. Okay, so what are cardiac glycosides? If you see, the cardiac glycoside have a sugar group, that is glycone group, and a non-sugar moiety, that is a glycone group. Okay, what are the drugs which are seen in this cardiac glycoside? We have two drugs, one is digoxin, second is digitoxin. So we will see the normal action. So this is the normal pathway. So if you see, these cardiac glycosides which are digoxin and digitoxin, these will inhibit sodium potassium ATPase. But before that, what does this sodium potassium ATPase do? What is its significance? So if you see, we have something, we have these L type of calcium channels. Okay, what does these L type of calcium channels do? These L type of calcium channels cause influx of calcium, right? Once they cause influx of calcium, the calcium has now entered into the cell, and this calcium, okay, that is one way. And second, from this is sarcoplasmic reticulum. From this sarcoplasmic reticulum, the calcium through these ryanodine 2 receptors, ryanodine calcium channel 2 receptors, calcium enters from sarcoplasmic reticulum into the cytoplasm of the cardiac cell. So because of that, the calcium from extracellular to intracellular and the calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum reaches the cell, and this increases the calcium concentration in the cell. Okay, this increased calcium concentration in the cell will result in depolarization. Okay, depolarization has occurred. Then after depolarization and action potential generation, okay, this calcium channel, calcium has to be, it should go back to its original place. So it goes back to the sarcoplasmic endoplasmic reticulum by this SERCA2 channels. Okay, that is sarcoplasmic endoplasmic reticulum calcium channel 2 type of channels. And second, it goes out, okay, of the cell through this calcium sodium channels. Okay, so antipode channel. So as a result, calcium goes out and sodium enters in. This sodium will go out again. Sodium efflux occurs again through sodium potassium ATPase, through which 3 sodium go outside, that is 3 sodium efflux occurs, while 2 potassium influx occurs. Right now, what is that force which is driving this whole process? For this whole process to occur, for the after depolarization, for the calcium to go out and to and for the cell to go back into the normal state, this calcium should go out, right? So for that, this sodium is important, right? We need to have this sodium gradient which is present between the cell, cardiac cell, and external environment. This sodium gradient is necessary for the calcium force to go out, calcium efflux. So now this digoxin drugs, these drugs like digoxin, digitoxin, or any cardiac glycosides, they will inhibit this sodium potassium ATPase. So there is no efflux of 3 sodium ions or influx of 2 potassium ions. So as a result, there is increased sodium in the cell. Okay, because the sodium were not left, the sodium cannot go outside through this channel, so there is increased sodium. So because there is increased sodium, this sodium from outside, it cannot enter through sodium calcium pump because of increased sodium. There is no potential difference between the outer membrane and inner membrane pertaining to sodium channel, sodium ions, and as a result, the sodium cannot enter inside the cell. So this channel, sodium calcium sodium channel, cannot work, and as a result, there is increased sodium which is increased calcium also, which is accumulated in the cell. Now because of this increased calcium, this will cause prolonged depolarization and thus leading to ionotropic action. Okay, so I think you have understood the topic a little. Fine. So I have written the same in sentences. Okay, so if you see, normally the L-type sodium channels, through this L-type sodium channels, calcium enters the cells and this causes depolarization. Okay, once the calcium enters the cells, there is calcium releases from ryanodine receptors in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and there is increased cytosolic calcium. So this increased cytosolic calcium causes contraction. Then after contraction, the residual calcium which is left, that can go out through three pathways. One, it enters the sarcoplasmic reticulum through SERCA2. Second, it can enter outside through 3 sodium 1 calcium exchanger, and it can also enter through sarcoplasmic calcium pump. Okay, then how does this digitalis act? The same thing I have written again. See, this digitalis inhibits this sodium potassium ATPase, and because of that, there is increased sodium in the cell. So because there is increased sodium in the cell, there is transmembrane gradient of sodium which normally drives the calcium outside. Thus the transmembrane gradient between the cell and external environment is lost, and as a result, there is increased calcium in the cytoplasm. This calcium is also taken up by sarcoplasmic reticulum, and there is increased calcium in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and overall it causes contraction. Okay, so we have inotropic effect which is seen. Now, what are the actions of this digitalis in different organs? So first, in heart, if you see digitalis in failing heart, what does digitoxin do? Digitoxin will increase the force of contraction in failing heart, that is positive inotropic effect. It will increase the velocity of contraction, because that is positive inotropic effect. These both are due to the calcium accumulated in the cell. It will also shorten the systole and prolong the diastole. So overall there will be complete emptying of the ventricle. So as a result there will be increased cardiac output, and there will be decreased end diastolic volume. Okay, there will be increased cardiac output and decreased end diastolic volume, and as a result there will be improved circulation. Okay, so because of this improved circulation, the vagal tone is restored. The vagal tone that is diminished in heart failure is restored, and as a result there will be increased effective refractory period. Okay, because of this increased effective refractory period and the vagal tone which has been restored, what does this vagal tone do? That is, what does the vagus do? The vagus will release acetylcholine. This acetylcholine inhibits the AV node, and thus this AV node and SA node, and thus this inhibiting AV node and SA node decreases the AV conduction, right? So that is what is written here in sentences, right? So as a result it has decreased AV conduction, right? Now next let us learn about electrophysiology. So this graph has been asked in the examination once, so you will have to look at this. So if you see, among this is the normal graph. This blue color is normal graph, this green color is the abnormal one. So what is happening here? Here the resting membrane potential is decreased. Okay, and rate of phase 0, see this is the phase 0, see this is phase 0 is big, right? Here the rate of phase 0 is decreased, and there is action potential duration is also decreased. So this is the normal action potential duration. Look at this, here the action potential duration is decreased, and if you see, amplitude of action potential is also decreased, right? What is increased is this slope. See, this slope has been increased. It is this slope which is there, this has been increased. The rest all are decreased. All this is evident from this graph, right? So you will have to remember them because these are very important. Next, the action on blood vessels. On blood vessels, if you see, digitalis improves the circulation. I have already told you this digitalis, what does it do? It will cause a reflex sympathetic overactivity withdrawal. Actually, it decreases the peripheral vascular resistance. You can remember that it decreases peripheral vascular resistance, but it has no effect on BP. It has no effect on BP. Then, what does it do on CNS? On CNS, if you see, at higher doses, it activates CTZ, that is chemoreceptor trigger zone, and as a result it causes vomiting and nausea. If you see, at still higher doses, it causes hyperpnea, central sympathetic stimulation, it causes mental confusion and visual disturbances. So these are seen at still higher doses. So if you see, at higher doses, it activates chemoreceptor trigger zone, causing nausea and vomiting. At still higher doses, it causes even more side effects like hyperpnea, okay, mental confusion and visual disturbances. Now first we will see the pharmacokinetics. So if you see the pharmacokinetics, this digoxin is bound to plasma protein. Number 1, it is bound to plasma protein, and it has the half-life of 40 hours, and it is excreted by renal route. Because it is excreted by renal route, it is contraindicated in renal failure. The only reason why it is contraindicated in renal failure is because it is excreted in renal route. Then if you see, it has narrow therapeutic index, and because it has narrow therapeutic index, we should do therapeutic drug monitoring is very important in this digoxin. And if you were asked what is the threshold for plasma concentration of digoxin, the threshold for plasma concentration of digoxin is 0.528 nanogram per ml is the threshold for this digoxin. Threshold for plasma concentration of digoxin is 0.5 to 0.8 nanometer per ml. That is pharmacokinetics. Then after pharmacokinetics, we will have to see side effects. Side effects are very important. Many questions are being asked about side effects. So the most common side effect being nausea and vomiting. Then we have cardiac side effects. So in the cardiac side effects, what is the most common cardiac side effect? Most common cardiac side effect is ventricular bigeminy and premature beat. Then what is the most specific cardiac side effect of digitalis? That is non-paroxysmal atrial and supraventricular tachycardia with variable AV block. The most specific cardiovascular side effect is non-paroxysmal atrial and supraventricular tachycardia with variable AV block. Then if you were asked a question, one liner, what is the most specific extra cardiac side effect? The most specific extra cardiac side effect is xanthopsia. Xanthopsia is the most cardiac extrapyramidal side effects. What are the most earliest side effects? The most earliest side effects include GI side effects, which include nausea, vomiting, anorexia. Then in this digitalis, you will see all types of arrhythmias are seen, except there is two types of arrhythmia which are actually not seen. The arrhythmias which are not seen include Mobitz type 2 heart block is not seen, and atrial flutter is not seen. We do not see Mobitz type 2 heart block and atrial flutter are two types of arrhythmias which are not seen. And you will also see visual disturbance associated with these arrhythmias. Okay, rarely skin rash and gynecomastia are associated with digitalis. So in this digitoxin, you have lots of adverse effects, right? If you find that there is digitalis toxicity, acute digitalis toxicity, what is the drug which you give? For acute digitalis toxicity, we give lidocaine. Then what is the drug of choice for digitalis induced arrhythmias? For most of the digitalis induced arrhythmias, the drug of choice is lidocaine again. Then what is the, if there is severe digitoxin toxicity, then what is the antidote for severe digitalis toxicity? That is digibind. The antidote for severe digoxin toxicity is digibind. Then what are the contraindications which you see in digitalis? These are also very important. The contraindications are especially hypokalemia and hypomagnesemia are main side of contraindications, because digitalis itself decreases the potassium. So you should not give it in conditions where there is decreased potassium. And if you see, the other contraindications include hypercalcemia, thyrotoxicosis, because thyrotoxicosis and hypocalcemia, both these increase the risk of arrhythmias. It is contraindicated in renal failure, Wolff-Parkinson's-White syndrome. Why is it contraindicated in renal failure? Because digoxin is excreted through renal route, so it is contraindicated in renal failure. In Wolff-Parkinson's-White syndrome, why is it contraindicated? Because digoxin decreases the conduction through AV node, but not by aberrant pathway, because it decreases the conduction by AV node. So there is a chance that aberrant pathway gets activated a lot, and as a result this is contraindicated in Wolff-Parkinson's-White syndrome. It is contraindicated in myocardial infarction and also partial and complete heart block. Okay, so these are the main contraindications of digoxin. Then this is important. What are the drugs which can increase the digitalis toxicity? Okay, the drugs which increase the digitalis toxicity include, we have diuretics, that is loop and thiazide diuretics. Why does these increase digitalis toxicity? Because these will decrease the potassium. Okay, because it will decrease potassium, and digitalis will in turn again decrease potassium. So this will cause potassium toxicity. Okay, erythromycin also causes digitalis toxicity. Then verapamil and amiodarone, because these will decrease AV conduction. So there was increased decrease in AV conduction, exaggerated decrease in AV conduction, and thus these are contraindicated. And corticosteroid tetracyclines can also cause digitalis toxicity. Then drugs like quinidine and cholestyramine can also cause digitalis toxicity. Okay, so these are the different drugs which will increase digitalis toxicity. Okay, if you see quinidine will decrease the excretion of digoxin, and this cholestyramine will decrease the absorption of digitalis from intestine. Okay, so these are the different drugs which will increase the digitalis toxicity. So once we have learnt about the drugs which will increase the digitalis toxicity, now digitalis is done. Next topic is chronic heart failure. We have seen acute heart failure. Now let us see chronic heart failure. So if you see in the chronic heart failure, this chronic heart failure will actually start with myocardial infarction. So when there is myocardial infarction, that is some type of infarction is present in some part of the heart, right? Because of that there is decreased ventricular performance. The ventricle cannot pump the blood properly, and because as the ventricle cannot pump the blood properly, okay, there is decreased ventricular performance, and thus there is decreased cardiac output. So this decreased cardiac output will activate the renin angiotensin pathway, and because of that this will produce aldosterone and thus causes sodium and water retention. Okay, because of this sodium and water retention there is increased preload. Okay, because of this there is increased pressure on the ventricles, leading to ventricular hypertrophy or ventricular remodeling, which will help the ventricle to pump the blood. Okay, so in chronic congestive heart failure, this is the mechanism how the ventricle undergoes remodeling, right? The same mechanism is put forward here, whose starting point is myocardial infarction. So if you see, we have to use those drugs which will counteract all these pathways. So what are happening here? First, there is decreased because of myocardial infarction. One thing happening is there is decreased ventricular performance. Okay, decreased cardiac output, which stimulates sympathetic system and also JG cells. Okay, and this will lead to sodium and water reabsorption and vasoconstriction, right? And this will lead to increased preload, leading to ventricular hypertrophy. So we have the drugs which will act at different levels. Digoxin will inhibit the ventricular performance. Then if you see, the digoxin will increase the ventricular performance by causing its inotropic action. By causing beta blockers and alpha blockers, these will activate the sympathetic system. Okay, these will inhibit the sympathetic system. Beta blockers and alpha blockers will inhibit the sympathetic system, and this RAS has been inhibited by ARBs. Okay, ACE inhibitors, renin, and in fact beta blockers. Diuretics will decrease the or cause diuresis and thus counteract with sodium and water reabsorption. This vasoconstriction can be counteracted by giving vasodilators. So these are the different drugs which are given in chronic congestive heart failure. So we will just name the drugs. Okay, for chronic heart failure, for the treatment of chronic heart failure, what are the drugs which we can use? For the treatment of chronic heart failure, we can use digoxin, diuretics. So in diuretics, in chronic congestive heart failure, in diuretics, loop diuretics are more commonly associated when compared to thiazide diuretics. Okay, so in the treatment of chronic congestive heart failure, in order to decrease the left ventricular hypertrophy, we can use angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers or beta blockers. In the beta blockers, most commonly we can use carvedilol. What is carvedilol? Carvedilol is beta blocker or plus alpha 1 blocker, and it is an anti-proliferative, and this carvedilol is an antioxidant. Okay, the next drugs include vasodilators. So if you see, in the vasodilators can also be used in chronic congestive heart failure. So these vasodilators include, first we have nitrates. Nitrates are actually venodilators. more, they are more commonly venodilators than arteriolodilators. So these venodilators will decrease the preload. So nitrates help in reduction of preload. Then we have hydralazine. Hydralazine are mainly arteriolodilated more than venodilator, because they dilate arterioles more than veins, so they decrease the afterload. Okay, so these nitrates if they are combined with this hydralazine, then we can decrease both preload and afterload also. So this combination can be given, and even this combination of nitrate with hydralazine also decreases the nitrate tolerance, which we sometimes encounter. The other vasodilators include, we can have sodium nitroprusside, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, or angiotensin receptor blockers. So all these are vasodilators which one looks at. Then along with that, there are some drugs which will decrease the mortality, left ventricular hypertrophy and or mortality in heart failure. The drugs which decrease the left ventricular mortality and left ventricular hypertrophy or mortality in heart failure includes mainly ACE inhibitors, which are the first line drugs. Then these include ARBs, angiotensin receptor blockers like spironolactone and eplerenone, and beta blockers. Beta blockers will decrease the left ventricular hypertrophy and mortality, but they should be used only in chronic heart failure. These beta blockers are contraindicated in acute heart failure. Okay, then what are the new drugs which are associated with heart failure? The newer group of drugs which are associated with heart failure includes, the first drug is nesiritide. So what is this nesiritide? This nesiritide is a recombinant BNP analog. So this is brain natriuretic peptide. Okay, this brain natriuretic peptide, normally it increases cyclic AMP and thus causes vasodilatation. Okay, now this nesiritide is a recombinant brain natriuretic peptide. So as a result, this will increase the brain natriuretic peptide. Okay, and as a result, it causes vasodilatation. Okay, because it is brain natriuretic peptide, it also increases the excretion of sodium through the kidney, and as a result, it has the diuretic effect. Then it has shorter half-life. Okay, and the half-life of this drug is 18 to 23 minutes. So the half-life of this drug is 18 to 23 minutes. So it can be given as IV in acute heart failure. You can use this as IV, and it is most commonly used in acute congestive heart failure. Then there are some side effects. This drug is associated with dyspnea at rest sometimes. Okay, then if you see this nesiritide will increase brain natriuretic peptide. There is one more group of drugs which are called as NEP, which is neural endopeptidase inhibitors, which include ecodotril and sacubitril. So if you see what is this neural endopeptidase, this neural endopeptidase will degrade this brain natriuretic peptide. It will metabolize this brain natriuretic peptide. So once you inhibit this neural endopeptidase, so this brain natriuretic peptide quantity will be increased. So this will again cause vasodilatation. So these are the new groups of drugs, which is neural endopeptidase inhibitors and nesiritide. The next group of drugs include, we have vasopeptidase inhibitors. Okay, what are these vasopeptidase inhibitors? These vasopeptidase inhibitors will inhibit acetylcholinesterase, and they will also inhibit neural endopeptidase. So they will inhibit acetylcholinesterase, and they will inhibit neural endopeptidase also. Okay, what are those drugs? They are omapatrilat, sampatrilat, fascidotrilat. So these drugs include omapatrilat, sampatrilat and fascidotrilat. Okay, what is the side effects of these drugs? The side effects of these drugs include angioedema, dry cough and dizziness are the side effects of these drugs. What are they? They cause angioedema, dryness and dry cough and dizziness are seen due to vasopeptidase inhibitors. The next group of drugs are called as Entresto. Okay, what is this Entresto? This Entresto include valsartan plus sacubitril. That means this Entresto is a combination of valsartan and sacubitril. So in this we have two drugs, which is, this includes ARBs, that is valsartan is an ARB, angiotensin receptor blocker, and if we combine this angiotensin receptor blocker with neural endopeptidase, then we call it something called as Entresto. Okay, this Entresto includes two drugs, one is valsartan, second sacubitril. Okay, then the next group of drugs are ANP analogs, that is atrial natriuretic peptide analogs, which include carperitide and ularitide. These includes carperitide and ularitide. Okay, ANP analogs are two, that is carperitide and ularitide. Okay, the next drug is semaglirine. What is this semaglirine? This semaglirine is a neuroregulatory protein, and this will improve the cardiac function. It is a newer drug, which is semaglirine. Then the next drug is liraglutide. This liraglutide is an GLP-1 analog, and it is an anti-diabetic drug. Right now it is used for trial of heart failure. Okay, the next drug is empagliflozin. This empagliflozin, if you see, this is an SGLT2 inhibitor. It is also an anti-diabetes mellitus drug. Then we have istaroxime. What is this istaroxime? This istaroxime is a sodium potassium ATPase blocker. Okay, so because it blocks sodium potassium ATPase, this will also increase the force of contraction similar to digoxin. Okay, that is istaroxime. The next drug is omecamtiv mecarbil. This omecamtiv mecarbil will activate myosin. Okay, and thus prolong the systole without increasing oxygen demand. Okay, this will prolong the systole without increasing oxygen demand. Okay, so these are the important drugs. Then we will see the last topic for today, which is classification of congestive heart failure. Yeah, we have divided according to American Heart Association and NYHA. We have divided the heart failures into 4 different classes. Okay, according to American Heart Failure, we have class A. It corresponds to pre-failure according to NYHA. Okay, this states that there are no symptoms and there are only risk factors are present. So you will have to treat the risk factors in this situation. Okay, the second group is group B, where according to AHA, and group 1 according to NYHA. Here you find only symptoms. You see only symptoms are present with severe exercise. Okay, you will see only symptoms, and because here symptoms are present, you will have to treat the symptoms. You will have to give angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, ARBs and diuretics. Okay, the next group includes C, group C of American Heart Association, and group 2 or 3 according to NYHA. Here you will see symptoms which are seen with mild to moderate exercise. Okay, so for this you will do the same, you will use the same drugs as you use for grade B, but you also add the other drugs like spironolactone, digoxin and vasodilators are added. Then in D we have D according to American Heart Association, and 4th class according to NYHA. Here you see severe symptoms are seen even at rest, and these include, mainly for this you will have to do heart transplantation. Okay, so this is about the classification of heart failure. Okay, so thank you guys for watching my lecture. In the next class we will learn about angina. Thank you.